Welcome, fifth graders, to lesson 518, video number 2. And today, this video, we're going to start looking at comparing fractions and decimals. And more important, when we're comparing them, we're looking at what ones are similar, we're looking at similarities, and we're looking at differences. So what we're going to start off with right here is we're going to start off with just basically a line. And this is going to be our number line. Okay, up at the top I'm going to write 1. Down at the bottom, actually I'm going to flip that around. I'm going to write 1 on this side, and I'm going to write 0 on this side. And this number line, we're going to deal with halves. We're going to deal with halves, and I'm just going to write halves, fourths, and eighths. Meaning we're going to start looking at the relationships between halves, fourths, and eighths. So when we look at 1, when we look at what each one of these would be, halves it would be 2 halves, which would be equal to how many fourths? 4 fourths, which would be equal to 8 eighths. Okay, and correspondingly at the bottom it would be 0 halves, 0 fourths, and 0 eighths. Okay, so now let's continue with this and let's start finding more connections here. So let's going to cut this right in half. Now if we're talking decimal, half is going to be 0.5. Okay, now it could also be 0.50 or 0.500. Now what's important to know is that all of these are the same. These are all the same. Now as a fraction, what does that correspond to? Well, if we're talking halves, it's 1/2. If we're talking fourths, it's 2 out of 4. And if we're talking eighths, it's 4 out of 8. Okay? Further, we're going to take our halves now, and we're going to separate that into a half and into a half. Now, if we're talking, we've taken 0.5 and divided that by half. It's going to be 0.25. Okay, and up here, I'm going to add 0.25, and it's going to be 0.75. Now, we're not going to find anything in the halves in this category because halves is only split into 2 parts. So we're going to look at 4 parts because now we have 1 part, 2 part, 3 part, 4 part. And this would down here would be whoops, I need my writing instrument here. This would be 1/4, and this would be 3/4. Now, it will also correspond to an eighth, and the eighth would be 2/4, and the eighth up here would be 6/4. I mean 6/8, and this one should be 2/8. I apologize there. Now, that's one of those mistakes that we make, that we multiply with the 1, but we have to make sure we multiply the numerator and the denominator. Multiply it by 2, multiplied it by 2. Now, so now we've taken care of the halves, which would be 0, 1, and 2. We've taken care of the fourths, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's continue with our eighths, and we're going to continue breaking this apart. And why don't we switch colors here, and we'll go with, because now in each one of these we're going to have 1/8 here. We're going to have 2/8. This is going to be 3/8. This will be 4. This is 4/8, so this is going to be 5/8. 6/8 is there, and this will be 7/8. And then we have 8/8 up there. So if we cut this in half, now if we cut 1/8 in half, I mean 2/8 in half to get 1/8, then we're going to have to cut 0.25 in half, and what we're going to get is 0.125. Same way we cut in between 4/8 and 2/8 we have 3/8. Well, in between 0.5 and 0.25 we're going to have 0.375. Now let's continue going up. In between 4/8 and 6/8 we're going to have 5/8. Between 1/2 and 0.75 we're going to have 0.625. Continuing up our ladder between 6/8 and 8/8, we're going to have 7/8, And between 0.75 and 1, we are going to have 0.875. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these are kind of important ones to know. And when I say important, the importance between these fractions and these corresponding decimals. So these equal the same. So 3 out of 4 is equal to 0.75. These are going to be some of your more common ones. In the next 2 videos, we're going to look at more of the common ones. So yeah, just be prepared.